Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. We see around us the leaders, so called leaders, are in fact not leaders. They are not authentic, they are not real, they are not visionaries. And when we say leaders, they should be visionaries. What we have is the rulers who rule not for the good of the people but for themselves. That's why the rulers, the prime ministers, the presidents, the kings, they need to be designated as leaders, not as rulers, because designation is the most important part. If the nomenclature is correct, what follows would automatically be justified. And as Confucius said, the beginning of wisdom is to call things by the proper name. So, the proper name for a person administering the country, for governing the state, should be a leader who has vision, who has selfless interest. And this was exemplified when Queen Elizabeth II died and the British Commonwealth entered in period of transition, not seen in 70 years. What's clearly mapped out is who will get the crown. And what's not so clear is the future of monarchy as an institution, though Charles III would be crowned as king in the month of May. But inevitably the questions arise that otherwise deemed to be too inconsequential to ask. And that is, what practical purpose does this system, whether you call it a monarch, whether you call it a democratically elected prime minister or the Republican president mean? What practical purpose does this exactly fulfill? What are the powers of the head of the state? And why should one person be given that power? And that we have seen, whether it's USA, where president is the supreme, though there are checks and balances. But look at Canada. There are no checks and balances, and the prime minister is the monarch of all his surveys. There are no checks, there are no balances, not even judiciary. Look at India. The only check and balance is judiciary. Look at Pakistan. There are two monarchs, and final arbiter is not the judiciary but the army. So, are these rulers needed? Yes and no, because we need somebody to govern. But the governance should be governance, not rule. So the question is, let's step back and ask the most important point: why should we care who is the ruler, who is the leader? My gut response would be, we should care. In fact, I would say it's healthy for a culture to be so fixated on political figures. And the political figures are in fact looming large in our wider horizon. Let's realize that the important point is to make today how to have a transition between opportunities to reflect and rethink. And this reflection is not about little things, but the big things too. And the primary focus of discussion is, of course, whether there should be a person who is a monarch or a king but lacks the capability, the creativity, the vision. Should he be there? Many people point out that the institutions like monarchy serve no longer any practical purposes. There are Democrats, die-hard, who say dictatorship is not required. But when the moment they become the president or the prime minister, for their tenure, they are no less dictatorial. In fact, you need somebody to run the show. And the very least that taxpayer could surely use that time to think who is there. The leader is a person who imparts a vision of the future with his innovation, with his creativity, and even if you are needed ceremonially, you need a leader that you can look to and rally around. Now it's true that society needs leaders, that nobody can deny. But unfortunately, the present leaders, with rare exceptions, they are there, but they are very rare. They prove that they are great rulers. They did not win willing followers like true leaders. They were simply born into a privileged family, a privileged position, or they manipulated things to get that power. They did nothing to earn it. And that's why Plato in his Republic talks of philosopher kings. Especially, those people should be kings who have no family to look after, because then they have no vested interest. Democracy is a bit better than monarchy and dictatorship because you have a time to change the government, but for that fixed tenure. If you are unlucky enough to elect a person who is not competent, then you had it. The people who are rulers, in whatever form of the government it may be, they assume they are entitled to power. They lack the capacity of being a trustee, which a leader does. Leader always thinks that he is in a position because he is a trustee, not the ruler. And that's why very rarely the rulers win the hearts of the people. But if you are a true leader, then you champion the cause people care about and earn their followers and admirers. It's very tempting to think that democracy is a genuine form of leadership emerges, which is not true. We have seen that. If you look at the history of USA, which prides itself being on the prime democracy, you will find that out of the 50 or 44, to be more precise, presidents, hardly 4 or 5 were really competent ones. Lincoln, Roosevelt, Wilson, and maybe George Washington and Jefferson. Look at the other presidents who fought duels, who were dishonest, who were corrupt, who were sex maniacs, and so on. Look at India. We had prime ministers, some of them have dictatorial tendencies, rather all of them. Some were extremely corrupt and some were deaf-mute. So, that temptation to think that democracy is a genuine form of leadership is not a fact. The politicians, the moment they are elected, are not leaders, they become rulers. They do inspire some, their acolytes, their followers, and their close circle, but they exert power on others. A genuine leader simply invites others to follow them. I remember the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal. He never used power. He came to our college, I remember I was a student at that time, and mixed with us as if, not like the Prime Ministers of today who will keep 2 football ground distance between the people whom they want to lead and themselves. And he had magnetism which present leadership lacks. Even the second Prime Minister, Jawaharlal, as was followed by Lal Bahadur and Indira Gandhi. They were very close to the people. They were leaders, partly, not fully, but partly they were leaders. But Jawaharlal himself and Lal Bahadur, they were great leaders. And then the fall started. Now what happens? How do you differentiate between a leader and a ruler? A genuine leader simply invites others to follow them. He invites, come with me. A politician demands compliance. That's a major difference. He says, I am there, so you have to follow me. A leader never says follow me. He inspires people. When the politician cannot escape or persuade people, he resorts to force. A leader never does. A politician demands compliance with a wish. A leader doesn't. He simply says, okay, let's share our wishes. The leaders compel the hearts with persuasion. They win the hearts. The politicians compel the hearts. Now, that's why the rulers are tyrannical in nature. It's my way or highway. That's the principle of life in them. And that is not acceptable. It's not true to say that the supporters are followers in the genuine sense of people. Quite possible. People vote for a politician because they have been given promises of the promised land. To that extent, voters are acting more as co-conspirators. And they work with the politicians to profit at the expense of their fellow citizens. That's not a leader, that's a demagogue. Now, the distinction between a leader and a ruler is very subtle, but it's extremely important. And it's important because it paints a very accurate picture of what modern politics is really about. It reveals the true nature of the beast. When politicians get away with calling themselves our leaders, it seems that their role is lofty and inspiring. But when we call them as rulers, then the true nature of the position is laid bare. It's just like the story, king is wearing no clothes. Except in this case, there is a fraud in the idea that the emperor is your friend. The truth is, he is your master. Yes, the society absolutely needs leaders. So how to differentiate? That's an important question. Genuine leaders are those who set an example and inspire others to follow them. So this is the difference. A leader has followers. A ruler has subjects. A leader inspires. A ruler commands. A leader wins loyalty. A ruler demands loyalty. A leader offers guidance. A ruler insists you follow his path. A leader sets the example. And a ruler, you refuse to obey him and he'll make an example of you. So rather than obsessing over kings, queens, presidents, prime ministers, let's focus our time and attention on the genuine leaders in the party, the people who make a difference. Let's not forget on Queen II and Charles III or Joe Biden or Putin or Modi or others. There have been and there would be rulers and demagogues who bring the worst out of us and make us fight. Let's pay attention to the people, whether they are public figures or your personal mentors. Those mentors who bring out the best in you. Look at the entrepreneurial visionaries. Look at creative trailblazers. Look at philosophical, moral, and spiritual inspirations. And see what guidance they have got to offer. And maybe that will inspire us to become true leaders ourselves. In my book, Leadership in the Digital Age, I discuss exactly these ethical, spiritual, trailblazing, creative, innovative practices that are required. Which would be a good thing. The world could use a fewer rulers and lot more genuine leaders. In these 200 odd countries, there are hardly 3 or 4 countries which have got good leaders, genuine leaders, innovative, inspiring leaders. The rest all have rulers. We need it to be the other way around. Is it hoping too much? Think about it. Thank you.